just wish to reiterate and to reaffirm the statements which have already been made on my behalf by Buckingham Palace.
Britain's Prince Andrew speaking out for the first time today to deny accusations that he had sex with an underage girl, allegedly being kept as a sex slave. That young woman also claims she was forced to have sex with high-profile defense attorney and Miami Beach resident Alan Dershowitz, who also denies those accusations. Local 10 News investigator Bob Norman spoke with Dershowitz today.
She's an admitted prostitute. She's a serial liar.
Attorney Alan Dershowitz today lashed out at his accuser, Virginia Roberts, who swore in a new affidavit that he had sex with her while she was an underage, quote, sex slave of wealthy Palm Beach financier Jeffrey Epstein.
She's lied.
But she wasn't lying about being sexually abused by Jeffrey Epstein as a minor, correct?
That is between her and Jeffrey Epstein.
Roberts, one of dozens of underage girls allegedly recruited by convicted sex offender Epstein, also released new photos, including this one she says was taken by Epstein when she was about 15. In the new affidavit, she claims Dershowitz had sex with her 6 times at Epstein's residences, as well as on his jet and private island, and swore to seeming new details regarding alleged sex with Prince Andrew at Epstein's order when she was 17. The two are photographed here in London.
I can tell you she is still a prostitute. She is selling false stories now for money about me.
Do you have any concern calling her a prostitute when she was victimized at such a young age by this wealthy man?
She was not victimized. She made her own decisions in life.
And at the age of 15, some would say that's a little young and that she was taken advantage of.
I'm talking about the age of 19. Look, that's between her and the federal government and the people that she claims victimized her.
Dershowitz is a longtime friend of Epstein's who represented him in the criminal underage sex case. Could you please?
I never saw a young underage woman.
Yet Epstein's former butler swore under oath that Dershowitz was at Epstein's residences at the same time underage girls were there.
Were there young women in another part of the house giving massages when I wasn't around? I have no idea of that.
Dershowitz did say he once received a massage at Epstein's mansion, but from an adult woman.
I kept my underwear on during the massage. I don't like massages particularly.
Hey, what stinks in here?
Bob Norman, Local 10 News.
Roberts' attorneys claim that Dershowitz has ducked a deposition, but Dershowitz told Bob he's willing to submit to one, but only after Roberts goes first.
Last night, dozens of unsealed court documents from the Epstein case emerged online. Some of them we'd seen before, others we hadn't. They paint collectively a picture of a justice system in which the rich and well-connected can do virtually whatever they want without penalty. In one sworn deposition, a woman called Virginia Giuffre claims that Epstein and others, including Prince Andrew of England and attorney Alan Dershowitz, sexually abused her when she was a minor. Giuffre says an FBI agent told her the agency, though they knew, didn't plan to do anything about it. Epstein's case, she claims he said, wasn't going anywhere because of, quote, the chain of command. That's her claim. The documents then describe what appears to be a remarkable abuse of power. Epstein's accusers say that Alan Dershowitz and Prince Andrew helped Epstein beat federal charges for sex crimes in 2008. They allege that Dershowitz crafted the immunity agreement so that he himself would not face criminal prosecution. Dershowitz hotly denies all of this in detail. He joins us in a moment to speak for himself, as he can. Alex Acosta, though, will not be joining us tonight. We wish he would. He's the former labor secretary who at the time was a federal prosecutor. Acosta is the one who agreed to the Epstein deal. When asked why he let a sex abuser skate, Acosta reportedly said this, quote, "I was told Epstein belonged to intelligence and to leave it alone." Well, what exactly does that mean? What intelligence service did Jeffrey Epstein work for, if any? And why did our government allow him to sexually abuse girls?
These people are sick.
We deserve answers to those questions. We should be demanding them. But so far, no one is answering them. Epstein can't tell us, obviously. He's dead. And the media, strangely, doesn't seem very interested in pressing to find out. It's possible that's because Epstein was close to a remarkable number of prominent Democratic politicians. The new documents suggest that former President Bill Clinton, for example, visited Epstein's private island with 2 young girls. Giuffre claims that Epstein made her have sex with former New Mexico Governor Bill Richardson and former U.S. Senator George Mitchell and a famous MIT scientist and others. Is any of that true? Well, we don't know if it's true. Ghislaine Maxwell probably does know. She's in custody right now. She's set to go on trial. Will she explain what happened and why? It doesn't look promising. Her lawyers fought the release of these documents. In just a minute, we will talk to Alan Dershowitz about the accusations against him and the case in general. But first tonight, Monica Lindstrom is a former federal prosecutor. She's been following the story very closely, and we're happy to have her on tonight. Monica, thanks so much for coming on. How would you summarize what we have just learned?
Well, it's very interesting because it's basically a nail in the coffin for Maxwell. If this victim, alleged victim, right, is proven to be very credible and believable, she is essentially saying that not only Epstein, but Maxwell was just as bad as Epstein. In fact, Maxwell was even worse because she's the one that brought her into this. She's the one that taught her how to give these massages and how to act towards these men and continues to do these things with Epstein. So it's very, very bad for Maxwell, and you can understand why Maxwell's attorneys were fighting against unsealing these documents. Yes. Number one, because they hurt her, but they're also thinking, wait a minute, this was a settlement that happened several years ago. Why are we dealing with this again now?
So what I don't understand is why she came back to the United States. She has 3 foreign passports, she has connections, she has a great deal of money. In fact, in denying her bail, the authorities made this point. She knew she was wanted here, but she came back anyway and spent $1 million on a house in New Hampshire. That doesn't make any sense at all. Why do you think she did that?
Well, one of them could be that she believes that she's innocent. She believes that she did not do anything wrong, so she has nothing to hide. It could also be the fact that she got away, allegedly, with a lot of things, right, with Epstein, and so maybe her ego is so big that she thinks she's untouchable, right? Allegedly, there's a lot of people, a lot of higher-ups in the government, or used to be in the government, that would protect her, so she's really not worried about anything happening. That could be the other reason why she came back. Ego.
What if she has a deal in progress with prosecutors to testify against somebody else, and she came back here to effectively surrender herself? Do you think that's possible? Do you see any evidence of that?
I think it's possible, and the evidence we see is from these unsealed documents, for example, that put people like Bill Clinton and other high-ranking officials in this kind of bubble of what we're dealing with, right? So there's evidence that she was somehow connected. Now, if I was the prosecutor, I'd want to protect her. I wouldn't want her coming back here if she was going to testify and give additional information about other people. I would want to keep her safe, because the reality is she's in jail right now. Who knows what's going to happen to her? Think about what happened to Epstein.
Right. No, and that is an obvious peril. I'm sure she thinks about it. Thanks so much for joining us. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Well, as I told you, Professor Alan Dershowitz was named repeatedly in the documents released Thursday night. He has been accused by at least one person of having sex with an underage minor on several occasions. He strongly, vehemently denies these charges. Dershowitz helped broker the deal, the immunity deal, between Epstein and the federal government. Epstein's accusers claim that Dershowitz crafted that deal to give himself immunity. Again, We're merely repeating the claims of others. Alan Dershowitz has been on the show many times. As you know, he wrote the book Guilt by Association, and we're happy to have him on tonight. Professor, thanks so much for coming on. I appreciate it.
Well, thanks. The book's Guilt by Accusation. And
Guilt by Accusation.
Right. And it's available through Kindle.
How dare you!
Shame on you.
Look, I agree with you, Tucker. I think there ought to be a very extensive investigation. I brought this case to the FBI. I went to the U.S. Attorney's Office. I went to the District Attorney. I wrote an op-ed piece for the Wall Street Journal saying, FBI, please investigate me. I have been asking for an investigation from day one. I wanted all this material unsealed. It's Gouffre, my accuser, who tried to get everything redacted, everything unsealed.
Right.
She deep-sixed tapes, and she deep-sixed emails. She deep-sixed a manuscript, all of which proves she never met me in her own words. The emails say, between her and a friend, why don't you name Dershowitz in your book? He's famous. We know there's no proof he did anything wrong, but name him in your book. Then she names him in my book as somebody in her book, as somebody she did not have sex with. She said she had sex with George Mitchell. She said she had sex with some of the other people. But she explicitly said she saw me once talking to Epstein and did not have sex with me. Her own lawyers admit that she made up stories about prominent people. Her own lawyer, David Boies, is on tape saying she's wrong, simply wrong to accuse me, that it was impossible that I could have been in places she said she saw me. So the evidence that she's lying about me is overwhelming.
Let me ask you about those places. So in 2003, Vanity Fair, the magazine, prepared a piece about Jeffrey Epstein having sex with underage girls. They were later bullied into not running those accusations. But the point is, a glossy magazine in New York had heard them. They were known. They were out there. You were friends with Jeffrey Epstein. You went to his home in New York, his home in Palm Beach. You went to his island, so-called Pedo Island. You flew in his plane many times. How did you not know?
Of course I didn't know. I first met him through the Lady Rothschild, a very prominent woman. She told me he was very, very charitable to Harvard. I went to the island with my wife and my daughter when it was not built up. He had just bought it. I was at his home mostly when I was his lawyer. I was not a close personal friend. He lived his private life very privately. President of Harvard, the provost of Harvard, Nobel Prize winners, all had the same kind of academic relationship with Epstein that I did. As soon as I found out that he was accused, my relationship with him totally changed.
But may I just interrupt you?
And I charged him for
Right. But when you were on Pedo Island or at his place, when you borrowed his place in Palm Beach or your house in New York,
with my grandchildren.
Okay, but every picture I've ever seen of his properties, you see young women around. Were there no young women when you were on his plane or any of his properties?
I never saw him in the presence of a young woman. When I was there with my children and grandchildren, there was a housekeeper and the housekeeper's wife. That's it. Nobody else was there. There were no pictures. I never saw him in the presence of a young woman. I never saw him in the presence of an underage woman. If I had, I would have turned him in immediately. My wife never saw him in the presence of a young woman. The only time I was with him was in academic situations, when I was representing him as a lawyer. Yes, he lent me his house because my granddaughter was in a soccer tournament, but it was empty. It was only the housekeeper, and it was just a friendly gesture to lend me his house. If I knew that anything had gone on in that house improper, you think I would have brought my grandchildren?
Well, but you continue to. No, look, I'm not accusing you of anything. I'm asking the obvious question. Vanity Fair knew, but you didn't know. Let me ask you though. In the plea, I mean, you went on to represent him to get him off the hook.
Right.
You are accused of writing an agreement that exempted yourself. We do know that the agreement.
Let me
finish. The agreement exempted, and I'm quoting, potential co-conspirators. Potential co-conspirators. You're saying that didn't apply to you. Why would the federal government agree to something like that? I'm honestly
confused. Well, first of all, let me be very clear. I hereby waive any possible immunity. I would never accept immunity. I didn't do anything wrong. Why would I accept immunity?
I don't think you can unilaterally do that.
It was drafted by another lawyer. I didn't even know the provision was part of the agreement. It never applied to me. No lawyer on the prosecution side would ever allow anybody who was suspected. You mentioned in the beginning that she went to the FBI. Yes, she went to the FBI. And she told them who she had sex with. She did not mention me. She never mentioned me in her interviews with her lawyers, with the FBI.
Well, I'm not claiming
when she met her lawyers who told her she would make a lot of money by falsely accusing her.
Okay. No, you've definitely impugned her motives and character, and we'll just let the viewers decide. And I think you make a really strong case. But I want to get to your defense of Jeffrey Epstein. You did get him off the hook, and you did so with a lot of other prominent people.
These people are sick.
Were you concerned? I mean, so the accusations were clearly true. You knew that at the time. Did you have moral qualms about it? And why do you think the feds went along with this? This doesn't make sense.
Well, ask the feds. I can tell you why I think they went along with it.
Yeah.
We had a very, very strong federal defense. It doesn't matter how many young women he may have had sex with in Palm Beach. The government had to prove that he transported them in interstate commerce, and they couldn't do that. They had a very weak federal case and a very strong state case. So the deal we arrived at was he would plead to the state charge, serve 18 months, and would not plead to the federal charge. That's very common. The job of the criminal defense lawyer is to get the best deal he can for his client. The job of the prosecutor is to do justice. The job of the judge is to make sure that justice is done.
Right.
But the job of the defense lawyer is to defend the client to the best ability in all ethical ways. I did that. I'm proud of it. I will continue to do that. I've done it for 55 years. That's my job. Does anybody want a lawyer who would not defend themselves? Of course not.
So let me ask you about and I don't understand the law around this, but I know that you do. The claim is that once that immunity deal was reached, the victims, alleged, real people making the accusations, had a right under federal law to know the outcome, and they weren't told the outcome, and that's a violation of federal law. Is that true?
No, that's being debated. The district court found one way, the Court of Appeals found another way. That's being litigated. Let it be litigated. That was not my job. As a criminal defense lawyer, my job was to get the best deal. Look, if I had gotten him acquitted and had him walk completely, I would have done an even better job. You know, Jeffrey Epstein almost fired me. He wouldn't pay me my fee because he didn't think I had done a good enough job that he had to serve 18 months and register as a sex offender. He thought I did a terrible job. I think I did a pretty good job, but that's for people to judge. But that's what a defense attorney is supposed to do. We're not supposed to throw the case.
And I'm certainly not suggesting that you should have. Since you knew him very well, I mean, that's beyond dispute.
I didn't know him that well. I knew him as an academic acquaintance. Yeah. I never met his mother. I never met his brother. I didn't know him about his birth law.
When you say people's houses, I'm not attacking you. I think it's fair to say, I mean, you know, people who come and stay at my 3 houses, if I had 3 houses, would know me fairly well.
Well, he offered us. Nobody was there.
Do you think he was murdered? Do you think he was murdered?
No, I think he committed suicide, but I think he may have paid off guards to allow him to commit suicide. It seems to me very difficult that he would have been allowed, the video cameras off, the cellmate taken out of the cell. I wouldn't put it beyond him to have paid guards to close their eyes. I don't think he could bear the possibility of having to spend the rest of his life in jail.
Fool me once. Shame on you. If fool me, we can't get fooled again.
Was he, so Alex Acosta suggested in the vetting before his confirmation as a cabinet secretary that he was told by the feds that Jeffrey Epstein was working for an intelligence service, or many claims to that effect. Did you ever hear anything about that in your defense of him? Do you believe it's true? And if so, which agent?
I don't believe it's true. If it was true, he would have told me that and asked me to use it for his benefit, and I would have used it for his benefit. I've had cases where I've defended people who've had some intelligence contact. He never told me about that. I don't think he had any. He certainly had no connection to the Israeli Mossad. He certainly had no connection to the CIA. So I can't believe that he had any intelligence connection. But it's not beyond the realm of possibility that he never told me about that. Lawyers don't often learn things about their client. Remember, when he pleaded guilty, there was only the 2 charges. one to soliciting an underage prostitute who was 17 and a half, and the other for soliciting an overage prostitute. We were not aware of all of these other allegations at the time. That's why we were able to get the deal we got. But look, the most important point is this woman, Dupre, who's at the center of all these accusations. She's accused everybody in his Rolodex. Must be investigated. We must look into her background. She's accused Al Gore and Tipper Gore of cavorting with Epstein on his island. They never even met Al Gore and Tipper Gore. Al Gore didn't know that. She is lying through her teeth, and the media has an obligation to investigate that.
Well, then, I mean, considering a former president was on Epstein's island, I think we can say that Bill Clinton, it seems very certain.
No.
He was never on the island.
Let me tell you, the former head of the FBI did a thorough investigation. He went to the Secret Service. Secret Service told us there's no evidence that he was ever on the island. He has categorically denied it. Her story is so fake. Her story is that Ghislaine Maxwell flew him on her helicopter where she had just gotten the license with Secret Service men on board and flew Bill Clinton to the island where he sat next to two underage young girls. Totally false story. The Secret Service record to rebut that.
Bill Clinton. Nice guy. Got a lot of problems coming up, in my opinion, with the famous island with Jeffrey Epstein. A lot of problems.
Everything this woman has said.
Wait, hold on. Wait. I'm sorry. Look, and I'm not. I would just say two things. Hold on. The Secret Service is not required to disclose the manifest or the facts of it. They can say whatever they want. A. B. Bill Clinton said he was never on the guy's plane, and that turned out to be a lie.
No. He admitted he was on his plane. Look, I'm not here to defend Bill Clinton. Bill Clinton was on his plane numerous times. I was on his plane. I never flew to his island on his plane. I was on his island once with my wife and my daughter when he just bought the island, along with Professor Michael Porter at Harvard, his wife, family. Look, let me be very clear. I have had sex with one woman since the day I met Jeffrey Epstein. I have done nothing wrong. I am being falsely accused. This woman has made up stories about so many people. It's time for the media to investigate this woman. I called for an FBI investigation. I agree with what you said in the beginning. Let's have a thorough investigation. I wanted all these records to come out. I want all the rest of the records to come out. I want everything to be made public because I have nothing to hide. I hope you are
your own best defense lawyer. I would say that. I would definitely.
I'm telling the truth. That's more important than being a defense lawyer. And I have the evidence to prove it. And she has not a scintilla of evidence beyond her own word, which is worthless because she has such a long history of lying. She is a serial liar who does it for money, and she's continuing to do it. And the media has been taken in by her. So the time has come to investigate me and her. I called for the FBI to do that. I hope they will.
Professor, thank you. I appreciate your coming on.
My pleasure. Thank you for giving me an opportunity to tell the truth to you.
Oh, absolutely. We always want people.
I appreciate it.
To speak in their own defense. Great to see you.
Professor, good to see you tonight. Why not fight this out in court in an effort to clear your name?
Well, I am going to. I have to do two things. One, defend the First Amendment right of every American to respond to false charges. And second, if the case does go to court, to show that she is a liar. Let me repeat categorically. She made up the whole story. I never met this woman. It was part of an extortion plot to obtain $1 billion from Leslie Wexner, a businessman, the man who owns Victoria's Secret. Her own lawyer admitted to me on tape that it would be impossible for me to have been in the various locations at those times, and that his client is, quote, wrong, simply wrong. I commissioned an investigation from the former head of the FBI, who concluded that she was wrong. Her own lawyers withdrew the charges, saying it was a mistake to do so. This same woman who accused me accused Bill Clinton and Al Gore and Tipper Gore of being on Jeffrey Epstein's island, and the reports of the Secret Service.
Bill Clinton did go to the island, right? Yeah, Bill Clinton
no,
did.
He was never on the island.
But he never went on the. He was never there ever.
No, he was never there. He issued a statement the other day saying he was never on the island, and Secret Service records confirmed that he was never on the island.
There was discrepancies on Alan. Wait, there was discrepancies on other matters with Bill Clinton. He said he was only on like 2 flights, turns out, or 4. It turns out there were 6. I mean, he said Secret Service was always with him. It turns out they weren't always with him when he was on Epstein's plane. So I wouldn't throw yourself in with Bill Clinton on this necessarily.
Let's talk about Al Gore. Al Gore. She claimed that Al and Tipper Gore were on the island. Not only did Al and Tipper Gore not know Jeffrey Epstein, but guess who Al Gore's lawyer was? David Boies, the same lawyer who claims that this woman made these improper sexual allegations. He could easily have just called his client, Al Gore, and said, Al, were you ever on Jeffrey Epstein's island? And he would have told her what he's told everybody else. No, he was never on the island. He didn't know her at all. The interesting thing is that Epstein is being prosecuted now, and they're not using this witness. The FBI and the U.S. Attorney's Office are not using this witness.
Does she have the same lawyer?
No,
Does she have the same lawyer? Does she have that same lawyer that you said you have on tape? Is he still representing her?
Yes. Oh, yeah. It's David Boies, who has, and his law firm, have one of the worst ethical records in the history of the United States. They have more ethical charges against them than any other
it's a big law firm. Yeah, it's a big law firm. I know.
But he's the head. He's the head of the law firm. He was charged with unethical conduct by the New York Times. In the Weinstein case, he was charged with questionable conduct. In the Theranos case, he has absolutely no credibility. But in this case, he knows that his client made up the whole story, and he told me that, and I have it on tape. All I did was repeat, basically on tape, what he had told me.
Well, that's devastating if you have it.
Simply wrong. It's devastating.
All right, got it.
And it'll be
as a former defense attorney, if you have that on tape, that's fair. All right. Journalist Vicky Ward made this comment about told Acosta would make Acosta you would make mincemeat out of the women. Let's listen.
The light that the Miami Herald shed on the victims' stories that were incredibly poignant and incredibly credible. Remember, back in 2008, Alan Dershowitz told Alexandra Acosta, and told journalists he was going to make mincemeat of these women.
What does that mean?
There's no truth to that at all. We had no truth. I met with Acosta only once with a group of lawyers. There were probably 15 lawyers and FBI agents. They have notes, I'm sure it would confirm. I never said anything like that. What we did say was that there was no credible evidence that Epstein at that time had transported any underage woman in interstate commerce, and that was required. By the way, Virginia Roberts was not underage. Her own lawyer and she have all admitted now that she didn't start working for Epstein until she was 17 years old, and that she doesn't even claim that she had sex with numerous people. She claims she had sex with former American congressmen until she was well over age. So she's lied just about everything. And of course, it's the job of the defense attorney to make sure that the evidence is based on credible evidence.
I can't believe I don't know the answer to this question, but I don't. Do you still represent him, and when did you stop representing him, Epstein?
No, I stopped representing him when the deal was made, and I haven't seen him in years. And, if his lawyers call me and ask me a question about the deal, of course, as a lawyer, I have to answer that question. Look, I was introduced to him by the Lady Rothschild. The people he hung out with at the time were the president of Harvard, the provost of Harvard.
Yeah,
my relationship with him was academic. We went to conferences, we had seminars in his office. None of us had any inkling that he had this other life. And as soon as we learned about it, obviously, all of us ended any kind of a social relationship. I then became his lawyer. I'm proud of the fact that I represented him. I represented a lot of controversial people, and we got a deal. Some people criticize the deal, but you can't criticize the defense attorney for trying to get the best deal possible. But I want to categorically again state, I never met this woman. She made it up completely. I will continue to say that till the day I die, and when I die, my children will continue to say it. It's a total categorical lie.
All right, Alan, we appreciate you coming on tonight. This story is explosive, and obviously the underlying allegations against Epstein are horrific. I appreciate you joining us tonight.
You know, there was a big investigation. The Miami Herald just did it, and of course your name came up about possible accusations of dealing with women who were underage.
Totally made up. Look, as to the first woman who accused me, her own lawyer admitted in front of witnesses that she was wrong, just wrong, that I couldn't have been in the places. The second woman is a woman who wrote to the New York Post claiming she had videotapes of Hillary Clinton, Bill Clinton, Donald Trump having sex with underage girls. The New York Post said, we don't believe you. They wouldn't even publish her story, but she's one of the people. So, you know, these are all come from the same source, David Boies, the attorney who's furious at me because I filed bar charges, unethical bar charges against him, and he threatened me that unless I withdrew the bar charges, he would find somebody else to accuse me. I don't think anybody believes this. Anybody takes this seriously. It's not like Me Too. Me Too, the men all knew the women. I never met these people. They were total strangers to me, and I'm looking for an opportunity. I'm looking for a trial. Let's have a hearing. There are emails for our secret, but that prove not only that I was framed, but who framed me. It names names. These people are going to go to jail once these emails come out, because this was a total frame-up for financial reasons, and I can prove it and will prove it. Have me back on the show when the emails come out. Boy, will it be so interesting. There'll be prominent people in handcuffs. Prominent people in handcuffs. Once these emails come out.
All right, Alan Dershowitz, always a pleasure to have you here.
This is Derek, and we're here at the Palm Beach County Courthouse. Just wrapped up the civil trial dealing with Mr. Bradley Edwards, attorney who's represented many of the victims of Jeffrey Epstein. First off, thank you so much for your work and for everything you've done.
Absolutely welcome.
This goes to the more salacious rumors, but I would like you to just, whatever you can say on it. Obviously, our current president has had relationships with Epstein in the past, and there are those, Katie Johnson and maybe other victims who've accused Trump of being involved in things like this. In my experience, Trump supporters will not listen to anything along those lines. Obviously, we're not a court of law here right now, but are those claims that though that case was dropped, it was dropped before it went to court, in your opinion as a lawyer and your experience, is there anything you can say as to the validity of those claims, or whether or not there will be any more about that?
Nothing at all. The only thing that I can say about President Trump is that he is the only person who, in 2009, when I served a lot of subpoenas on a lot of people, or at least gave notice to some pretty connected people that I wanted to talk to them, is the only person who picked up the phone and said, let's just talk, I'll give you as much time as you want, I'll tell you what you need to know, and was very helpful in the information that he gave, and gave no indication whatsoever that he was involved in anything untoward whatsoever, but had good information that checked out and that helped us, and then we didn't have to take a deposition of him.
That was in 2009?
That was in 2009. So,
do you know if there's any truth to James Patterson's claims that Trump kicked Epstein out of Mar-a-Lago?
I've definitely heard that. I definitely heard that, and I don't know that it was Trump himself as opposed to a manager there,
Trump's club, so
yeah,
people credit him.
I've heard the rumor that Epstein was kicked out of there for allegedly trying to pick up somebody's daughter or something like that. But I think I did chase that down as far as I could and never was able to confirm it.
The question is, what should a defense attorney do? The defense attorney should do everything in his power or her power to get the best possible deal, and you should then complain about it. That's perfectly appropriate. That's the way the marketplace should operate. But I'm going to continue to try to get the best deal I can.
Well,
I've gotten guilty people acquitted of murder.
I kept my underwear on during the massage. I don't like massages particularly.
Hey, what stinks in here?
Bill Clinton.
Nice guy. Got a lot of problems coming up, in my opinion, with the famous island with Jeffrey Epstein. A lot of problems.
Fire up a bowl and accept your fate.